Hey there, Brain Explorers. Ready for a fascinating deep dive? Today, we're cracking open Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. It's like a user manual for your own mind. And trust me, there are more surprises in there than you might think.
Absolutely. This book is a classic for a reason.
So the other day, I'm shopping online, right? And I totally fell for that classic limited time offer trick.
Oh, tell me you didn't.
I know,
Mm.
but it got me thinking about why these psychological nudges are so darn effective.
Well, Kahneman would say it's all about how our brains are wired.
Yeah, he talks about these two systems of thinking, system one and system two, right?
Exactly. Think of system one as that automatic gut feeling part of your brain. It's always on, super fast, and doesn't like to waste time overthinking things.
So that's system one. What about system two?
System two is more like your inner Sherlock Holmes. It's slower, more deliberate, and likes to analyze all the clues before making a judgment.
Like when you're solving a tricky puzzle or trying to figure out a friend's cryptic crossword clue.
Exactly. You need your system two for that.
But here's the thing. Kahneman says system one, as helpful as it is, can sometimes lead us to make some pretty wacky decisions.
Oh, absolutely. System one is great for dodging a swerving car, but not so great for, say, planning your retirement.
Or resisting that limited time offer.
Exactly. And one of the things that makes System 1 so prone to errors is what Kahneman calls inattentional blindness.
Inattentional blindness, what's that?
Well, have you ever been so focused on something that you completely miss something obvious happening right in front of you?
You mean like when you're texting and walk into a pole?
Well, yeah. But Kahneman takes it a step further with this experiment he talks about in the book.
Oh yeah, the invisible gorilla experiment, right? I read about that.
You know it. He shows people this video where they're asked to count how many times players pass a basketball.
Okay, sounds simple enough.
But here's the thing. While they're busy counting passes, a person in a gorilla suit walks right through the middle of the screen.
Wait, seriously? And people don't notice?
Many don't. They're so focused on the task that they become blind to the gorilla.
Wow, that's wild. So you mean our brains can just filter out important information, even if it's staring us right in the face?
That's exactly what Kahneman is saying, and it happens more often than you think.
That's a little unnerving when you think about it.
It is. But the good news is, just being aware of these blind spots can help us make better decisions.
So knowing about these blind spots is step one. What else can we do?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
So how do these mental blind spots, these, what was it again?
Inattentional blindness.
Right, inattentional blindness. How do they actually trip us up in real life?
Well, you see, our brains are kind of lazy, or I guess efficient is a nicer way to put it.
Efficiently lazy.
In a way. They love taking shortcuts. Kahneman calls them heuristics.
Heuristics. Sounds complicated.
Not really. They're like mental rules of thumb. Think of them as your brain's way of saying, I've seen this before, I know what to do.
Okay, so instead of analyzing every little thing, our brains just go with what they already kind of know.
Exactly. And most of the time it works out fine. But sometimes these shortcuts lead to, well, let's just say interesting choices.
Interesting bad or interesting good?
Think more like predictably irrational. These are the cognitive biases Kahneman talks about.
Cognitive biases, right? Like, what is that? Oh, the K word thing.
The availability heuristic. You're thinking of the experiment where you ask people if there are more words starting with K or words with K as the third letter.
Yeah. And most people say words starting with K, right? Even though that's totally wrong.
Spot on. We remember words starting with K more easily, so our brains assume they must be more common.
So our brains are basically going, if it's easy to think of, it must be true. What other mental gymnastics are we prone to?
Oh, so many. But one of my favorites is the anchoring effect.
Anchoring. Is that anything like dropping anchor on a boat?
Kind of. It's the idea that even totally random information can influence our judgments.
Okay, now you have to explain that one. That doesn't make sense.
All right, picture this. Kahneman asked people to guess Gandhi's age when he died. Right. But here's the kicker. Before they guessed, he spun a wheel of fortune.
A wheel of fortune, like the game show.
Exactly. But this wheel was rigged to land on either 10 or 65.
So nothing to do with Gandhi's actual age.
Nothing at all.
Oh.
But those who saw the number 10 guessed a younger age, and those who saw 65 guessed an older age.
Wait, are you serious? So even though the wheel was totally random, it still influenced their guesses?
Yep. It's like that first number, even if it's completely meaningless, acts as an anchor, pulling our estimates closer to it.
Wow. So that's why when I see a ridiculous sale price, even if I know it's still too high, I suddenly feel like I'm getting a great deal.
Precisely. Anchoring is everywhere. It can influence how much we're willing to pay for something, how we evaluate risks, all sorts of things. And speaking of how things are presented, Kahneman also dives into this idea of framing.
Framing, like a picture frame.
Sort of, but in this case, it's about how the way information is presented or framed can totally change how we react to it.
Even if the information itself is the same.
Exactly. It's kind of sneaky when you think about it.
Okay, give me an example.
Sure. Imagine you have to choose between two medical treatments. Treatment A has a 90% survival rate. Treatment B has a 10% mortality rate.
But those are the same thing, right?
Exactly. But studies show that people are more likely to choose treatment A.
I guess 90% survival rate just sounds better than 10% mortality rate, even though they mean the same thing.
Exactly. That's framing in action. Our brains tend to focus on what sounds more positive, even if the underlying facts are identical.
That's crazy. So just changing the wording can actually affect our choices.
Yep. And then there's the whole idea of loss aversion to consider, too.
So we're basically walking around with these easily tricked brains, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way to, like, rewire them or something?
Well, not rewire exactly, but Kahneman definitely gives us hope. This isn't about feeling doomed by our biases. It's about understanding them so we can make smarter choices.
Okay, so how do we do that? Give us the secrets.
Well, one powerful technique Kahneman talks about is taking an outside view.
An outside view, like literally going outside.
Not quite. It's more about mentally stepping back from a situation. Instead of getting bogged down in the details, you try to see the bigger picture.
Okay, I think I get it. But give me an example.
Sure. Imagine you're planning a kitchen renovation.
Oh boy, kitchen renovations. Those can be dangerous.
Exactly. They're a classic example of what Kahneman calls the planning fallacy. We tend to underestimate how long things will take and how much they'll cost, especially when it's something we really want.
Yeah, like that dream kitchen you've always wanted.
Exactly. We get so focused on our own best-case scenario that we forget about all the potential hiccups along the way.
So with the outside view, how do we avoid that?
Instead of just focusing on your dream kitchen, you'd research like average timelines for similar renovations in your area, typical costs, things like that.
So you're basically comparing your situation to what actually happens in the real world, on average.
Exactly. Taking an outside view helps you set more realistic expectations, which, let's face it, is usually a good thing.
Makes sense. It's kind of like getting a reality check before you get in too deep.
Exactly. Now remember all those biases we talked about earlier, framing, anchoring, all that. Just being aware of them can make a huge difference in how you respond to situations.
So it's not just about learning these fancy terms, it's about actually applying them to our own lives.
100%. This book isn't just about cognitive biases, it's about becoming more conscious thinkers.
I love that. It's about recognizing that our intuition can be both a superpower and a trap, depending on how we use it. This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. A huge thanks to our expert for breaking down these complex ideas, and of course to Daniel Kahneman for writing such a thought-provoking book. And listeners, we hope you've enjoyed this journey into the quirks of your own minds. If you want to go even deeper, definitely check out Thinking Fast and Slow. And until next time, keep those brains buzzing, and we'll catch you on our next deep dive.